A couple of weeks ago, I started playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The idea I had was very much to do a full playthrough, but given that the videos combined don't get to 5 views, I'm once again reminded that this kind of stuff is not what I do. It's not why you're here. You're here for something more elegantly put together and edited than me simply waffling while playing. So instead of showing you the entire playthrough, I'll be reviewing the experiences as I go, talking about the strong points, the weak ones, and the thing that absolutely made me want to burn the game. I've played up to the 4th chapter and already have so many mixed feelings about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I really enjoy some things, but there are also aspects of this game that I loathe with a passion I didn't think possible. So let's talk about it all, the road so far, if you will. First off, let's get the good stuff out of the way. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks amazing. The visuals are stunning and the environments, so far, are breathtaking. I really like it. Music is outstanding. Every single track memorable, and boss fight music is so damn good. I would love for some bosses to have just a bit more health so I can keep hearing the tracks for a little while longer. And the voice acting, both English and Japanese, is good. It's damn good. I'm intrigued about the story. The opening sequence that seems to blend timelines, with Zack returning with Cloud to Midgar and seeing the Avalanche crew on the highway being taken by Shinra, is incredibly interesting. I look forward to seeing where that goes, especially because they go hard on it and apparently kill Aerith off. I did not see that coming. I laughed and in fact cheered that in their retelling of the Nibelheim incident, Tifa calls out the inconsistencies in Cloud's story, specifically that Cloud wasn't there, or that she has no memory of him being there, with the added fascinating detail that in the memories, the lone Shinra guard with them clearly uses Cloud's model, because that, of course, is Cloud, and Tifa doesn't remember him because he wore a helmet the entire time. On that entire sequence, love the sudden glitches in Cloud's perception, telling us that something is off. I mean, we know something's off, but it's a nice indicator. Same with a peanut gallery interrupting his tale to ask questions, including a hilarious set of comments if you choose that Cloud did in fact rummage through Tifa's stuff. Love that to bits. And you gotta love that in every combat sequence or special attack animation, Sephiroth just struts and poses like an Abercrombie & Fitch model. So much that I used one of those moments for my thumbnail for the first episode of my playthrough. It was too good to pass up. Queen's Blood rules. It's by far the best Final Fantasy card game I've ever played since Triple Triad, and I love me some Triple Triad. I'm intrigued, though not thoroughly convinced yet, on the whole party relationship thing. But it's still too early in the game for me to pass judgment on it. Though I did like that the synergy attacks and other combination stuff improves the relationship. It's something that Nihon Falcom did with the bonding stuff in Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure that I always thought was pretty sleek, and it really makes it so your combat choices, your favorite tactical pairs, develop the relationship. It's a good form of immersive storytelling and player agency. I was pleasantly surprised with Red 13's gameplay. I don't use him in my main party, but was forced to play with him in the mine, along with Barret, and really enjoy his tanking with built-in self-healing. I still need to experiment with him a bit more, but it was an interesting playstyle. The first open area section had everything I wanted. My big concern was that the open areas were going to be like they tend to be in quite a few JRPGs, where you have an open space background in Skybox, but the actual play area is more or less small rooms or hallway-like paths. Imagine something like Tales of Berseria, for example. That one is very much that style. But no, this is very open-ended, lots of rest points or chocobo spots, and when you unlock your birdie, you can call it any time. I'm intrigued by the mystery of the relics, and no, I won't call them proto-relics, that's a dumb name. But I'm intrigued about it, and from the glimpses we get, I know it's Greg. Gilgamesh, for those who haven't played Final Fantasy XIV. For the rest of us, it's Greg. That's about as far as I'll get you with the good stuff. Now let's talk about the bad. From the beginning, the game was losing me in terms of patience and adoration. My points for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth dropping drastically, and the reason was that every time I strayed from the main path, from the critical journey up the mountain to the reactor, because I wanted to explore every corner of this map, Final Fantasy VII would kill my running speed, making Cloud walk at such a slow pace. I, of course, persevered. The game might not want me to, but I'm a stubborn bastard and I will have my way. Though having said so, at some point, I had reached the limits of my patience, and just went with the game to just be done with it. It didn't help that later in the Escape from Calm, the game decided to pull the same crap on me. I am not a fan of the way the combat system works in terms of dodging and blocking, specifically parrying. In good implementations of a parry system, Your block interrupts your attack animation, so you can react to it quickly enough. Not in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. No, you have to stop attacking and just wait for the next attack to try to perfect parry. But having to stop attacking or casting or anything just kills the momentum. Not to mention that for some enemies, the parry means you get an opening for retaliation, and with others, specifically the heavier enemies, you just block. Also, dodging is good to get away from an enemy, create some distance, but to actually dodge, it's mostly useless. Too many attacks have wide hitboxes that this dodge, lacking any invisibility frames, just can't do much against. I also thoroughly dislike that unless you equip specific materials or actively control the entire party, there's a good chance that the AT bars for your other party members will never fill up. I thought we had this stuff figured out many games ago, and not only in the Final Fantasy series. What happened to setting AI companions to being aggressive or defensive or just heal or just use magic? It feels like such a disappointing step backwards in game design. And I find it horrendous that you have to waste a materia slot for the if you're not using the character, they will use their signature attack. Also known as the if you're not using them, they're worth a damn materia. I wasn't going to do that. That's a pointless materia. So in the end, I elected to swap around party members. As an added annoyance, many times I had been controlling a party member and staying away while the others were for once doing their part. I wasn't attacking or doing anything aggressive, yet still the enemy switched out which character were attacking to the one I was controlling, regardless of any aggro the other members were pulling. It makes it pointless to build out a character in the tank position. Again, didn't happen every time, but enough for me to make this mention. I feel Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a victim of this paradigm of homogeneity in game design. Like all modern games, it has crafting and gathering materials. Did Final Fantasy VII need crafting and gathering materials? No, it didn't. It just means that now there are rare items you can only get by grinding certain creatures. Yay! So good, such a brave step forward. And of course, as a game with an open world section, there are of course towers to reveal the map, and in doing so make the game go full Ubisoft with tons of side activities. I dislike opening the menu and seeing like 5 different gauges or experience bars for a bunch of stuff. Materials have always had levels, but there's also your particular weapon experience, also your weapons have levels now, and even the crafting has levels and experience. I know this is an RPG, but Final Fantasy VII is taking the whole leveling thing to the extreme. And worst of all, most of these new systems are boring and bland. The weapon levels had nothing interesting save unlocking sections of the skill tree, and the weapon skills, which are like weapon mods you can attach to your weapons, are mostly meh. Just random passive bonuses. Nothing really interesting, nothing that changes the playstyle or lets you customize a build. I want to know who saw our good boy Chadley in Final Fantasy Remake and thought, you know what, he should talk 1000% more. Interrupt every activity you do with incessant pointless prattling that communicates nothing and just tells you what you just did. Like, oh Cloud, you have just defeated these wolves. I know, I can see that. And not only that, but someone decided, you know what, it's time we one-up Nintendo and create a more annoying assistant character than Fi and Navi combined. Neither of them will, constantly talking. And given they just state the obvious most of the time, the Fi comparison is very much apt. And at least Navi and Fi were useful. These two just talk. Now I just skip every time they want to talk to me. I'm not a fan of pointless localization. I think I've said this a few times in other videos. I know it's a minor gripe, but there is one advantage to having a Japanese voice track, is that you can hear what they've called a bunch of stuff, and for most of it is, well, English. And then it gets localized into something that not only makes less sense, but is far more obtuse. The best example is folios. In Japanese, they're straight up called skill books. But are they books with your skills on them? And you're telling me that folio is a better term for it? It still hasn't reached Ni no Kuni levels of localization stupidity, where they took a character called Mark in the Japanese version and renamed him to Philip in the English one. I really hope I don't have to make a video in the future where I have to say that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has done a much more stupid localization choice than Ni no Kuni. Though the fact that someone made the choice to use a nonsense term like proto-relic is not giving me high hopes. For the record, those are called ancient matter in Japanese. Not saying the name's better, it's clunky English. But you could have just gone with relic. Proto-relic, someone probably thought sounded much more intellectual. In truth, it sounds stupid. But what takes the top prize for the thing that makes me hate my time with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are the endless and pointless tutorials for every single piece of gameplay, up to and including buying and selling at the freaking shops. Final Fantasy VII holds your hand more than every Nintendo game ever created. Hell, Detective Pikachu, aka Baby's first point-and-click adventure game, is a hand-holdy game. Too much so. It has fewer tutorials in its entire game than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has in its first 2 chapters. Tutorials pop up more often in this game than jump scares in Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm a semi-intelligent guy, and I've been playing games for a long time, and most importantly, I want to discover things on my own. The fact there isn't an option to disable all tutorials is baffling, and I have a feeling that this game will continue to throw tutorials at me, and I will continue to scream at the screen until the very last second of the game. I predict a tutorial before the last boss in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I can just see it coming. I knew there were gonna be plot changes. I was ready for them. But in the back of my mind were some things I expected to see and do. One of them is the big snake leading up to the mines. In the original game, you could try your luck with the swamp, mess around and swiftly find out with the snake just erasing you from the face of the world. At which point you get yourself a chocobo to bypass the snake. But it's still your choice to engage or skip. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth prevents you from going into the swamp on your own to try your luck against the snake. Instead, it tells you that you need the chocobo, and you're told by the people at the chocobo farm that the chocobos will make short work of the swamp, that they'll move very quickly through it, and that the snake won't be able to catch them. Except of course, instead of running swiftly across the swamp, their movement speed in there is terribly slow, up to their necks in water, and the snake is a mandatory fight. The boss itself is not bad, but the design of the encounter of that section feels like a downgrade from the original, from player agency to railroading. Fortunately, the boss fight in the mine kinda makes up for it. Not so much the giant stone thing, but the Turks. I will always love to beat the ever-loving snot out of Mr. Worldwide, Pitbull, Rude. Hopefully by now, you get why I'm unsure of how I feel about this game. Story-wise, I'm in. I'm all in on this ride. It's everything else that I'm struggling with. But I'm up to chapter 4 or 5. I'll let you know how things go after the next 5. Thanks for joining me. I'd love to know if you had the same annoyances, or if unlike me, you managed to take it all in stride. If you did, I envy you. If you liked any part of this giant rant, please consider dropping a like, share it with someone, and maybe subscribe. It's free, and it helps me quite a bit. See you on the next one.